The giant space station floated quietly in the dark between stars, its crystal walls shining with soft blue light. Inside, creatures from across the galaxy had gathered to watch something they thought would be entertaining. They called themselves the Watchers today. They were here to see humans die. Ambassador Kil Dong-su of the Nexari people tapped his glass-like fingers against the viewing window. His body was made of living crystal that sparkled when he moved. He was excited, though. He tried not to show it. The Nexari had watched many species disappear over the years, and humans were about to join that list. "How long do you think they will last?" asked Ambassador Han Minho, whose energy body flickered like a flame in the darkness. His people, the Vorthok, found it amusing when primitive species tried to fight against impossible odds.
Always.
Lost in the end. The oldest creature in the room was Keeper Yu Jae-soon. His people had been watching civilizations rise and fall for thousands of years. He stood silently near the main display screen, his ancient eyes studying the tactical information. The Zephyrian hegemony had been moving through human space for weeks, destroying everything in their path. On the screen, red dots showed human colonies going dark one by one. New Beijing Station had stopped transmitting 3 days ago. The mining complex on Titan was nothing but floating debris. Europa Research Facility had sent one last message before the silence. "They're not taking prisoners. They're killing everyone." The Watchers had comfortable seats arranged in a circle around the main display. Some brought special food from their home worlds. Others had recording equipment to capture the final moments of humanity. This was entertainment for them, something to break up the boring routine of their advanced civilizations. Say 12 hours, announced Kil Dong-su, placing a small crystal on the betting table. Once the Zephyrian bioships reach Earth's defense platforms, it will be over quickly. The other Watchers nodded and made their own bets. The Zephyrians were known for their efficiency. Their living ships could adapt to any defense, and they had never lost a cleansing operation. It chose species that were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to leave alive. Humans definitely fit that description. A new transmission crackled through the station's speakers. It was from a human cargo ship trying to escape the advancing fleet. "Mayday, Mayday. This is Captain Kim Huanwoo of the trading vessel Prosperity. Unknown ships are attacking civilian targets. They won't respond to our calls for peace talks. They're just murdering everyone they find." The transmission ended in static and screaming. "Fascinating," whispered Han Minho, his energy form brightening with interest. "They still think they can negotiate." The Watchers had seen this pattern before. First came the confusion as the target species tried to understand why they were being attacked. Then desperate attempts at communication and diplomacy. Finally, the last-ditch military resistance before extinction. Humans were following the script perfectly. On the tactical display, the Zephyrian fleet moved like a slow-moving storm through human space. Their bioships were beautiful in a terrible way, grown rather than built, with hulls that pulsed with organic patterns. Each ship was alive, able to heal damage and adapt to new threats. They had conquered 12 species using these vessels. "Look at their defense preparations," laughed Ambassador Park Soo-jin of the Kalari Republic. Her people had been watching. The Zephyrians' previous campaigns, they're building fixed fortifications. They still think this is a conventional war. The humans were indeed preparing for battle in the old-fashioned way. Orbital defense platforms bristled with weapons around. Their home-world military fleets took defensive positions. Ground-based installations charged their energy shields. It was exactly what every other doomed species had tried. Keeper Yu Jae-soon finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of ages. "They fight like they always have. With anger and desperation, it will not save them." The Watchers settled back in their seats as the first Zephyrian scouts appeared at the edge of the solar system. Long-range sensors showed the massive bioships moving into attack formation. Earth's defense platforms immediately started firing, their energy beams creating beautiful light shows against the darkness. "It begins," announced Kil Dong-su with satisfaction. None of the Watchers noticed the strange readings at the edge of their sensors. Space itself seemed to be bending slightly, as if something massive was moving through dimensions that normal detection equipment couldn't scan. The distortions were subtle, barely visible even to their advanced instruments. They were too busy watching the main show to pay attention to background anomalies. The Zephyrian fleet was advancing toward Earth with unstoppable force. The human defense platforms were already taking damage. Evacuation ships were fleeing from the planet's surface. Everything was going according to plan. The watchers checked their recording equipment and adjusted their viewing angles. This was the moment they had traveled across the galaxy to see. Final hours of humanity were about to begin, and they wanted to capture every detail for their archives. They had no idea that they were about to witness something completely different from what they expected. Admiral Park Jun-ho stood deep underground in the command bunker, 3 kilometers beneath the Korean peninsula. The thick concrete walls could not stop the terrible sounds from above. Every few minutes, the entire bunker shook as another orbital defense platform died in space. "Sir, Defense Platform 7 just went silent," reported Lieutenant Commander Lee So-young. Her voice stayed calm, even though her hands were shaking. On the main screen, they could see the platform's final moments. The Zephyrian bioship had wrapped around it like a giant snake, crushing the metal structure until it exploded. "Platform 3 is badly damaged," she continued. "They're asking permission to ram the nearest enemy ship." Park looked at the tactical display. Only 6 platforms remained out of the original 20. The Zephyrian fleet moved through space like hungry predators, their living ships pulsing with strange bioluminescent patterns. Each bioship was the size of a city, grown from alien DNA and trained to kill. "Permission granted," Park said without hesitation. "All remaining platforms are authorized for collision attacks if their weapons fail." The Admiral had gray hair and deep lines around his eyes from years of military service. He had fought in 3 smaller wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. The enemy wasn't just trying to defeat humanity. They wanted to erase every trace of human existence from the galaxy. A new transmission filled the bunker. The voice belonged to the Zephyrian fleet commander, speaking in perfect human language. "Through translation devices, humans of the 3rd planet, you have spread like a disease through this sector of space. Your violence, your constant wars, your complete disregard for civilized behavior ends today. We offer you one final mercy. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." Through the reinforced viewing windows, they could see the sky burning. Massive bioships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Their organic hulls glowed with internal fires as they discharged energy weapons that turned entire city blocks into puddles of melted glass and metal. "How many evacuation ships got away?" Park asked. Colonel Nam Kijan checked his communications board. "The last transport cleared the atmosphere 47 minutes ago, sir. All civilian populations have been evacuated to the outer colonies." Park nodded grimly. At least the people were safe, but Earth itself was dying. The cities where humans had lived for thousands of years were burning. The oceans were boiling under alien fire. The forests were turning to ash. The Zephyrian ships moved with terrible confidence. They had done this before to other species. Their formation was perfect, their attacks coordinated. They showed no hurry, because they knew they had already won. "Sir, we're getting reports from the ground defense units," said Major Kim Tae-young. "The bioships are landing troops in major cities. They're not just bombing us. No, they're hunting survivors." Park closed his eyes for a moment. The enemy wasn't satisfied with simple destruction. They wanted to make sure every human was dead before they declared victory. This was genocide, pure and simple. All ground units are to fight to the last man. He ordered, "No surrender, no prisoners." The watching species and their observation stations leaned forward with interest. This was exactly what they had expected. The primitive humans were making their final stand, just like all the other species. Before them, some of the watchers were already preparing their reports for the galactic archives. In space around Earth, the remaining defense platforms made their desperate final attacks. Platform 3, its weapons destroyed and hull breached, accelerated directly into a bioship twice its size. The collision created a brief new star as both vessels exploded together. "That's one less of them," whispered Lee So-young. But for every bioship they destroyed, 10 more took its place. The Zephyrian fleet was enormous. Hundreds of vessels that had been growing and multiplying for decades. They had prepared for this campaign carefully. Breeding ships specifically designed to destroy human technology, the bioships began orbital bombardment of Earth's surface. Energy beams lanced down from space, each one powerful enough to level a mountain. The planet's magnetic field flickered and sparked under the assault. The aurora borealis appeared at the equator as charged particles from the attacks interacted with Earth's protective barriers. "Sir, we're losing contact with the European command bunkers," reported Nam Ki-jun. "The Asian facilities are still operational, but barely." Park studied the tactical display. The enemy had complete control of orbital space. Our bioships were landing troops in every major population center. Ground resistance was fierce, but ultimately hopeless. Humanity was fighting with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. "How long until they reach this bunker?" he asked. 6 hours, maybe 7, replied Lee So-young. "Their ground forces are moving systematically through each sector." The admiral looked around at his staff. These were good people, dedicated soldiers, who had served humanity their entire lives. They deserved better than to die in a hole in the ground, waiting for alien killers to find them. "Prepare the final broadcast," he ordered. "I want every human facility in the galaxy to know what happened here." As the staff worked to set up the transmission equipment, none of them noticed the strange readings appearing on the deep space sensors. Reality itself seemed to be bending at the edge of the solar system, as if something massive was trying to break through from another dimension. The watchers were, too, busy enjoying the show to pay attention to minor sensor anomalies. The space around Earth suddenly twisted and tore like ripping fabric. Reality itself seemed to scream as massive holes opened in the darkness. Something enormous was forcing its way through from another dimension, and the very laws of physics bent under the strain. Captain Cho Min-jin gripped his command chair as the dreadnought, Indomitable, phased into normal space. The fold space drive made a sound like thunder mixed with breaking glass as it powered down. Round him, his crew worked with deadly precision, their faces grim and determined. They had spent 3 months hiding in the space between dimensions, waiting for this exact moment. The human fleet that emerged was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. These weren't the sleek, elegant ships that other civilizations built. These were brutal, angular warships that looked like they had been designed by people who understood that war was about killing your enemies as efficiently as possible. Each dreadnought was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that had been built for one purpose: destruction. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles were white as she gripped her console. "The Zephyrian fleet is moving to defensive positions." Min-jong could see the enemy through the bridge's armored windows. The bioships were beautiful in their own alien way, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. But he knew what those elegant vessels had done to human colonies. He had seen the recordings from New Beijing Station, watched the security footage from Europa Research Facility. These creatures had murdered billions of innocent people. "Open a channel 2. The Zephyrian Fleet Commander," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of the enemy leader. The alien had features that seemed almost human, but there was something cold and reptilian in its eyes. It looked at Min-jin with obvious surprise and growing disdain. "More humans," the Zephyrian commander said, its voice carrying through the translation systems. "You only delay the inevitable. Your planet is already dying. Surrender now, and we will make your extinction swift and painless." Min-jong smiled, but there was no warmth in it. His eyes were hard as steel, shaped by months of preparation for this moment. "You wanted to see how humans fight. Now you'll learn why the galaxy should have left us alone." He cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "Lieutenant Park Dae-han, you may fire when ready." The human fleet opened fire with a sound like the end of the world. Kinetic weapons launched depleted uranium slugs at incredible speeds, each projectile carrying enough energy to punch through a mountain. Fusion torpedoes streaked through space, burning hotter than the core of a star. Railguns that stretched along the entire length of the dreadnoughts fired continuously, sending streams of metal death toward the enemy. The Zephyrian bioships had been expecting another conventional battle. They were used to fighting enemies who followed the established rules of galactic warfare. Energy weapons fired in coordinated patterns, elegant maneuvers, honorable single combat between matched opponents. This was something entirely different. The human weapons were designed to kill, not to look impressive. The depleted uranium slugs tore through bioship hulls like paper. The fusion torpedoes created miniature suns that burned away entire sections of the enemy fleet. The railgun projectiles moved so fast, they were invisible, appearing only as sudden explosions when they hit their targets. "Direct hit on their command ship," reported Yang Suben, her voice rising with excitement.
"Oh."
"Their formation is breaking apart." In the observation stations scattered throughout the system, the watchers fell silent. This wasn't what they had expected to see. The primitive humans were supposed to die quietly, following the same pattern as every other species. Zephyrians had cleansed. Instead, they were fighting back with weapons and tactics that none of the advanced civilizations had ever imagined. Ambassador, kill Dongsu's. Crystal form flickered with confusion as he watched the tactical displays. This is impossible. Where did they get ships like that? We've been monitoring their technology for decades. The battle raged across space around Earth. Human dreadnoughts moved like giant predators, their weapons never stopping. Fighter squadrons launched from hidden bays, their pilots screaming battle cries as they dove into the enemy formation. The Zephyrian bioships tried to adapt, their living hulls shifting and changing to defend against the new threats. But the human weapons were too varied, too unpredictable. "They're not fighting like a civilized species," whispered Han Minho, his energy form dimming with shock. "They're fighting like ... like animals." Keeper Yu Jae-sung watched in silence as centuries of assumptions about galactic warfare crumbled. Before his eyes, the humans didn't care about honor or tradition. They cared about winning, and they were willing to do whatever it took to achieve victory. Captain Minjun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as Zephyrian bioships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. His crew worked around him with mechanical efficiency, loading weapons, adjusting targeting systems, coordinating. With the other ships in the fleet, "Sir, the enemy is requesting withdrawal protocols," reported Yang Sudash. Binjan studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was indeed pulling back, but their formation remained mostly intact. They weren't defeated yet, just surprised. If he let them escape, they would return with reinforcements and better preparation. "Negative," he said quietly. "All ships, pursuit course. We're going to finish this." The hunt was about to begin. The chase through space became a lesson in how humans really fought when their survival was at stake. While the Zephyrian bioships moved in beautiful formations, firing their energy weapons in coordinated patterns, the human fleet attacked like a pack of wild wolves. To outside observers, it looked like chaos, but there was a deadly logic behind every move that the enemy couldn't understand. Captain Kim Taeyang watched his ship's weapon systems fail one by one aboard the destroyer Retribution. Sparks flew from damaged control panels as his crew fought to keep the vessel operational. A Zephyrian bioship had wrapped its living tendrils around his hull, trying to crush the human vessel like a giant snake. "Sir, main guns are offline," reported his weapons officer. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. We're losing life support." Kim looked at the tactical display showing the bioship that was slowly killing his ship. The alien vessel was 3 times larger than the Retribution, its organic hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns as it prepared to deliver the final blow. "All hands prepare for ramming speed," Kim announced over the ship's communication system. His crew didn't hesitate or question the order. They understood what needed to be done. The Retribution fired its emergency thrusters at full power, accelerating directly into the bioship's central mass. The collision created a brilliant explosion as the destroyer's fusion reactors overloaded on impact. Both vessels disappeared in a flash of light that briefly outshone the nearby stars. "That's the spirit," whispered Captain Cho Minjun from the bridge of the Indomitable as he watched his fellow captains sacrifice. "Make them pay for every inch." Fighter squadrons launched from the dreadnought's hangar bays, their pilots screaming battle cries as they dove into the enemy formation. These weren't the elegant single-seat fighters that other species used for ceremonial combat. These were heavily armed attack craft designed to punch through enemy defenses and cause maximum damage. Lieutenant Colonel Bay Hyjin led Lightning Squadron through a cloud of Zephyrian fighter organisms. The alien creatures looked like flying jellyfish with built-in weapons, beautiful but deadly. Wingman Major Song Woo-jin stayed close as she lined up her attack run on a massive biocruiser. "Hornets away," she called out, releasing a spread of guided missiles that her squadron had nicknamed after angry insects. The missiles swarmed toward their target, each one programmed to find the most vulnerable spots in the bioship's hull. Explosions that followed tore through the organic vessel like fire through paper. The biocruiser's living hull tried to heal itself, but the human weapons had been designed to prevent exactly that kind of adaptation. Chemical agents in the warheads poisoned the alien tissue, making regeneration impossible. The human tactics were completely different from anything the watching species had ever seen. Other civilizations fought with honor, following ancient rules of engagement that had been established over thousands of years. There were proper ways to challenge an enemy, accepted methods of conducting battle, and protocols for ending conflicts. Humans ignored all of that. They fought to win. Period. They modified their weapons in the middle of battle, adapted their tactics as the situation changed, and showed a disturbing willingness to sacrifice their own ships for strategic advantage. When their main guns failed, they used their ships as giant missiles. When their missiles ran out, they rammed their fighters into enemy vessels. They're not following any recognized patterns of warfare, observed Ambassador Kil Dong-soo from his observation station. His crystalline form flickered with confusion as he watched the tactical displays. This is completely outside all established military doctrine. The Zephyrian fleet had conquered 12 other species using the same basic strategy. Their bioships would adapt to whatever weapons the enemy used. Their living hulls would heal from damage, and their superior numbers would eventually overwhelm any resistance. It had worked every time. But humans refused to follow the script. Every time a bioship adapted to one type of weapon, the humans switched to something completely different. When the aliens learned to defend against kinetic projectiles, the humans started using chemical weapons. When the bioships developed resistance to fusion torpedoes, the humans began firing concentrated streams of radiation.
Sir.
"The enemy fleet is falling back," reported Commander Yang Subin from the tactical station aboard the Indomitable. "They're requesting standard withdrawal protocols." Captain Min-jun studied the enemy formation on his display screen. The Zephyrian bioships were indeed retreating, but they weren't broken. Their formation was still intact, and they still had most of their fighting strength. If he followed normal galactic conventions, he would allow them to withdraw with honor. "Negative," he said firmly. "All ships, pursue and engage. We're not finished here." The other human captains acknowledged the order without question. They understood what their commander was thinking. The Zephyrians had come to Earth to commit genocide. They had murdered billions of innocent people in the outer colonies. They had shown no mercy to human civilians. Now, they would receive none. In return, in the observation stations, the watching species finally began to understand what they were seeing. This wasn't just a military defeat. This was the emergence of something new and dangerous in the galaxy. A species that wrote its own rules and enforced them with overwhelming violence. Ancient Keeper Yu Jae-sung spoke for the first time in hours, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "I don't think they care about our conventions." The hunt continued across 3 star systems, and the humans showed no signs of stopping. The chase lasted for 3 days and covered 4 different star systems. The human fleet hunted the retreating Zephyrians with the patience of experienced predators, following them through hyperspace jumps and tracking them to every hiding place. No mercy was shown. No prisoners were taken. The species that had cleansed, human colonies learned what it meant to be hunted to extinction. Admiral Park Jun-ho stood in the rebuilt command center on Earth, watching the final battle unfold on the tactical displays. The planet's surface was still scarred from the Zephyrian attack, but the fires had been put out and reconstruction had already begun. Humans were good at rebuilding after destruction. Captain Cho Min-chun's face appeared on the communication screen. His uniform was torn and stained with smoke from weeks of continuous battle. Behind him, his crew worked at damaged control stations, but their faces showed grim satisfaction. "The sector is clear, sir," Min-jun reported. "The last Zephyrian stronghold has been eliminated. All their military assets have been destroyed. We're ready to begin the journey home." "Acknowledged, Captain." "Well done," Park replied. "Bring our people home." The human fleet had not just defeated the Zephyrian invasion. They had followed the enemy back to their home systems and systematically destroyed every military base, every weapons facility, every ship construction yard they could find. The Zephyrians would never threaten another species again. 3 weeks later, the human diplomatic vessel New Sol arrived at the Galactic Council chambers. The massive space station had been built thousands of years ago as a neutral meeting place for all civilized species. Its halls had witnessed the rise and fall of countless empires, but they had never seen anything quite like what was about to happen. Ambassador Lee Youngmin walked through the great hall with confident steps. He was a tall man with graying hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Behind him walked a small group of human diplomats, all of them veterans of the recent war. They carried themselves like soldiers. It's not like the usual soft-spoken negotiators that most species sent to council meetings. The watching species who had gathered to observe humanity's extinction now scrambled to establish diplomatic relations with the newcomers. Ambassador Kildong-su approached Lee Youngmin with obvious nervousness, his crystalline form flickering with uncertainty. "Ambassador, the Nexari Republic wishes to extend our friendship to humanity," he said quickly. "We had no knowledge of the Zephyrian attack. If we had known, we would have intervened to prevent such tragedy." Lee Youngmin looked at the crystal being with calm eyes. "Of course you didn't know," he replied in a voice that carried no emotion. "You were too busy watching us die to prevent it." The silence in the chamber was so complete that the soft hum of the station's life support systems seemed loud. Representatives from dozens of species stood frozen, afraid to speak or move. They had expected the humans to be grateful for any attention from the advanced civilizations. "The human government has established new protocols for interspecies relations," Lee Youngmin continued, his voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. "We will defend ourselves with overwhelming force. We'll protect our allies with absolute loyalty. And we will show mercy only to those who show it first." He paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. Many of them were species that had watched the invasion with amusement, placing bets on how long humanity would survive. Others had actively supported the Zephyrian cleansing operations in the past. "The galaxy wanted to see how humans fight," he said. "Now you know. Suggest you remember the lesson." Ambassador Han Minho of the Vorthok stepped forward, his energy form brightening with what might have been fear. "Surely you don't mean to threaten the entire galactic community. We are a peaceful confederation of advanced civilizations." "Peaceful?" Lee Youngmin repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You watch genocide happen for entertainment, place bets on the extinction of an entire species. You call that peaceful?" The human ambassador reached into his briefcase and pulled out a data pad. "We have recordings of everything. Every conversation, every bet, every moment of enjoyment you took from our suffering. We know exactly who you are." The assembled representatives began to murmur nervously among themselves. They had thought their observation stations were secret, their activities hidden from the primitive humans. The idea that they had been monitored and recorded was terrifying. "What do you want?" asked Keeper Yujisun, his ancient voice carrying resignation. He had lived long enough to recognize when the balance of power had permanently shifted. "We want to be left alone," Lee Youngmin replied simply. "We want to rebuild our worlds, expand our civilization, and explore the galaxy in peace. Anyone threatens us again, if anyone attacks our people or our allies, we will respond with the same force we used against the Zephyrians." He looked directly at each representative in turn. "We are not asking for your permission. We are not requesting membership in your council. We are informing you of the new reality. Humanity is now a galactic power, and we will act accordingly." Human ambassador closed his briefcase and turned to leave. The choice is yours. We can be your allies, your trading partners, even your friends, but we will never again be your victims." As the human delegation walked out of the chamber, the watching species stood in stunned silence. They had come to observe the death of a primitive civilization. Instead, they had witnessed the birth of something that would change the galaxy forever. The rules had changed, and humanity had written them in fire and blood.